We lay my love and I beneath the weeping willow, but now alone I lie and weep beside the tree, singing, "O willow waly," by the tree that weeps with me, singing, "O willow waly," till my lover returns to me. When from the top floor window a face emerges, his radiant smile smirking down at me, we lay my love and I beneath the weeping willow. A broken heart I have, O willow, they will die, O willow, they will die. This is It Records. Welcome back, all you creatures of the night. It is I, one of your hosts of this show, Matt Johnson. Thanks for joining us. And my dearest friends of all are here as well. Peter Hansen and Lindsay Clark. Mm-hmm.
Dearest friends, you say?
Oh, here we go.
You don't say hello?
You didn't come to my birthday?
The invitation must have got lost in the mail. I apologize.
Yeah, we're real chums.
Your dearest friends. We're all hosts of this show together.
Compared to who? Your cat?
Yeah, well, she's way up there, guys. So I'm sorry. It's hard to beat her.
Yeah, truly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, it's fair. But I'm allergic to cats, so
Are you?
I got things to say about cats. I am. I'm very allergic to cats.
I feel like that's fairly common. Like, a lot of my friends are also allergic to cats.
Yeah, I was allergic to dogs, but I think, like, getting a dog,
You got over it.
got through it.
Interesting. You overcame
Yeah.
a bodily reaction
Yeah.
to something just by
think so.
forcing yourself to interact with it.
Constant exposure.
Yeah.
That's quite an achievement.
It's just like, oh, your body is pure misery right now. Well, let's get a little better here.
Well, everything works out for you. At least where dogs are concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm just, like, literally sick all the time and don't even know it anymore.
Well, I mean,
You've
Either
just
way, you've
become
adapted.
accustomed.
Yeah. Like, I'm just, like, violently ill without even realizing
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Well, I hope it's the other one. I hope it's the former, I guess. I hope you just overcame it and you're not in misery every day. But speaking of misery, this is a horror podcast, and we talk about all the things that keep you up in the night. This week on the podcast, we did the 1961 film The Innocents, directed by Jack Clayton.
The children do not live with you?
No, they are at my country estate in Bly. A rather large, rather lonely place.
Have they had a governess before?
Unfortunately. Not that there was anything wrong with Miss Jessel. She was an excellent governess and a most respectable woman.
I'm not certain that I understand you, sir.
She died.
We've all been waiting and waiting for you to come. Oh, we have been excited.
So have I. I've been very excited indeed. I never imagined. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's all right, miss. It's always happening.
And what an enchanting child she is.
She does like to wander, to go off by herself. We're always hunting her.
Oh, yes. I heard you just now as I was coming through the garden. I heard you call her name.
Oh, not me, miss. Perhaps it was Anna or Cook.
Promise now. You won't go away.
I expect to be here for a very long time. What was she like?
Who, miss?
The other governess, the one who died.
Miss Giddens, where would the Lord take my soul to?
To heaven.
Are you certain?
Yes, of course, because you're a very, very good girl.
But I might not be. And if I weren't, wouldn't the Lord just leave me here to walk around? Isn't that what happens to some people?
Is there anyone living here that I don't know about? There in the broad sunlight, I saw the other one. There are two of them. Abominations. How did Miss Jessel die?
She put an end to herself. She was found in the lake.
shall I say when his feet enter softly, leaving the marks of his grave on my floor?
A British film. And for those of you who don't know it, if you're not familiar, it is in the Criterion Collection. And it follows a woman who's a governess. And it's based on the Henry James story, The Turn of the Screw. Her job as the governess is to look over 2 orphans in a Victorian home. And she begins to see what she believes are ghosts and suspects the children's bizarre behavior in the house as a result of possible supernatural powers possessing the children. That is The Innocents, 1961.
How would you describe a governess? What is that job title?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, because when I first watched this, I thought, like, oh, she's going to be a nanny sort of character where she was going to look after these kids, but they have that at the house when she goes there. And I think the governess is like a teacher. I thought the governess was like a homeschool kind of teacher where she would look after them. Is that correct? Do you know what a governess is?
I was generally asking
Yeah,
you.
no idea.
That's generally... Yeah, you know, it's the damnedest thing. I looked this up. Yes, as a woman employed to teach children in a private household. So she's like a tutor or a homeschool teacher, is what a governess would be. So she doesn't really
Interesting.
look after them like a nanny or something. Like all that stuff was someone else. I'm just going to teach them, educate them.
Something I have never heard of this movie. How did you know about it, and what made you pick it for the podcast?
Yeah, this is actually my first time watching it. I had never seen it before, but we did the mini episode prior to this about ghost stories, and I have heard of this film. It's actually in the Criterion Collection, so that's what kind of drew me to it. And it was set to be like this ghost story, supernatural, like really atmospheric film, and really stylized in that way. And I'm drawn to those types of movies where it kind of builds the atmosphere, kind of like A Tale of Two Sisters, which is kind of that similar type of vibe where it builds an atmosphere. Are there ghosts there in the house with them? But it's not about the jump scares. It's just about you kind of, are you seeing things or not? And those ones always intrigue me. I've heard about this for a long time, and I just had never seen it, so I wanted to do it on the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Plus, Truman Capote is attached to this, so that's pretty
I did see that name in the credits, but I didn't read like what he did. He wrote most of it, right?
Yeah, as far as my research goes, first it's a novel by Henry James called The Turn of the Screw. Then it was adapted to the screenplay, the stage by William Archibald. So it was a play. William Archibald was attached to write the screenplay, but Jack Clayton said this screenplay is not that great. Brought in Truman Capote, who they worked on a film together prior. Forgetting the name of it. So Truman Capote came in and kind of added a lot of the psychological, like really subtle stuff in this film, the really suggestive stuff. He had a lot of that aspect because Archibald was more in your face, I guess, with the material.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, I bet, even though I don't know what his version was, Archibald, but I could imagine it, like how you're explaining it, how it's more like 50s, like sci-fi, because like I feel like those type of movies were so popular, and Truman Capote was like such a like the new age at the time, because like I feel like even though this movie's old, it kind of feels kind of modern in a way of like how much of a thriller it is, even though it is like slower than your stereotypical movie of today. Like I feel like just the way it like builds up tension is kind of like more modern compared to the movies back then.
I agree, and I'd mention one thing with that is, at that time in Britain at least, Hammer films were pretty big. I'm not really sure if we've done one on the podcast, but that's a very stylized type of... Hammer films are very stylized, and Clayton wanted to make a film that was a departure from that. He wanted to make it more stylized, more moody compared to the Hammer films, so that was kind of deliberate with his efforts, I think. And to his credit, as you said, it feels more modern in the way it was shot.
I mean, if they tried to be like Hammer, because like Hammer was so big, like it just would feel like a copycat, like because it wasn't by them, so you had to do something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they were so like Hammer was so influential on so many horror films, and they remade so many classic Universal movies too. It's just like their impact was pretty big. I think then, but like I think a lot of people notice it now when looking back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing I was going to mention when you were talking about it feels more modern, but you didn't know what Archibald's version of like the screenplay was. He wrote the play for the book. His version, from my research, was really grounded in the supernatural, and the ghosts were legitimate. And that's kind of how the novel was written. Whereas Clayton wanted to be ambiguous, which we can talk about that now, like with the plot elements and stuff. But I feel like with the governess, you don't really know if the ghosts are there or if it's in her head.
Yeah.
Is that what you guys kind of took from it?
100%.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%.
Which I think adds to the creepiness and the, dark gothic atmosphere.
It's not that beginning that like states off like how that beginning is actually like so creepy to me. Like it's just like very soft like singing.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Right?
It's a lot.
And it's just like a lullaby, and it's oh my god, it's so frightening to me.
Yeah, and it's called A Willow Waly, and the part of that crawl that I did was some of the lyrics from it. And that was actually a hot button topic of like what they were going to use as the score for a while, and they landed on that and created it. But I found interesting with that opening credits, which is, it was unnerving, I felt. But Clayton said he created it where it's basically Miss Giddens with a rosary in like candlelight. And it's just her hands really, and kind of her face comes into it. But he said he wanted her to sing that lullaby in the dark where he wanted to make you feel like you were trusting this character. And something uneasy was going on. Like you could trust her in this whatever atmosphere he was creating, but also because it was like all dark and the shadows, he wanted to make believe that you can't really trust her. Well, everything that might be going on might be just in her head. So like, she's the person you're supposed to trust, but she's an unreliable narrator, essentially.
Yeah.
I think that opening scene, did a good job of establishing that. I didn't think about it in so many words, but that's pretty much how I felt watching it.
Yeah.
The first time I watched this, I was actually with a group of friends. There was like probably 3 or 4 of us, and we're all just like, "What the fuck?" Like this is so fucking creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Cause like not many like horror movies start off that way. Like I don't know. It was just like it was like very like I think that's where I like was just immediately impressed that like not too often you find yourself like an older horror movie. Like I feel like people kind of like are either really harsh on it or they're like nostalgic over it. Mm-hmm. It's like usually one of those two. But then like when you like watch one for the first time that actually is generally creeping you out, then I'm like, damn, like I give this movie fucking props.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it builds that atmosphere, but the cinematographer, I'm blanking on his name, but he had worked with Clayton before, and they used Cinemascope for this film, if you're familiar. And Clayton was kind of against it at first, but he embraced it. They used a lot of like deep focus in this film, which kind of it means this places the foreground, the background, and the middle ground all in focus. So it kind of creates a bigger space within the same environment. And he used the shadows well. I think he made that mansion, even though it was big, claustrophobic, and it made you feel kind of trapped within that mansion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Freddie Francis was the director of photography.
Okay.
who worked on The Elephant Man.
There we go. Yeah.
Straight Story. So two David Lynch movies right there. Glory and Cape Fear.
Wow.
With Scorsese.
It's a pretty good resume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not too shabby.
Too shabby, yeah. And then speaking of like the framing and the photography, I think one thing that I kind of missed when I was first going through it is a lot of the characters are framed on the edge of shots, which kind of makes you feel that uneasiness that like something's kind of off on the other side of the frame, which I didn't. You kind of always felt that something was lurking, and going back and doing some research is he did that purposely in that deep focus shot to make them on the corner and have this empty space basically kind of fill the screen. They kind of make you feel something's out of balance the whole time, which I thought was an interesting technique.
Not something I picked up
I feel
on.
like Carpenter kind of took influence. Like, I feel like even though it's not like he never states that innocence is like an influence, but I feel like he does that a lot with the original Halloween.
Yeah, I think so.
Which I never really thought about until like right when you said it, is like it made me like have that thought.
It's an effective technique. I feel like you don't consciously think of it, but when you're watching a shot like that, it makes you kind of feel uneasy just because of the framing. It's all about the shots.
If you don't have shots, you got nothing.
Do we want to talk about the kids and characters and kind of more plot, maybe?
They're too British.
We can start there. They're ridiculously polite, but you know kind of almost right away that there's something up with the younger sister. There's a boy and a girl, and the boy, Miles, is away at school for the time being, and then the younger girl, Flora, like, I don't know, like, they make it pretty obvious, like, that something weird is, like, going on with the kids.
Yeah. I feel like that became even more of a thing in the 60s with, like, Rosemary's Baby and The Omen. This was, like, kind of ahead of that. Well, also The Village of the Damned, which Miles was a part of.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
like,
really?
Yeah, he had just...
I think that kid was a really good, like, popular actor, right?
Yeah,
Not that I would know, but...
I didn't really think about, like, the kids, like... The first time I watched it, I didn't really think about the kids acting weird. Because I just thought they were just, like, ridiculously polite and British. That it's, like, that's just what I kept thinking about. And then, like, I was just thinking about, like, that it's all in her head, like, the whole time.
Uh-huh.
Or, like... I was just, like... She just seems really paranoid. Is really what I was just thinking.
Yeah. I got that too. It was all in her head. But then there's some shots that are like cross dissolves or whatever, where you kind of see, well, Quint and I forget the other lady's name were old groundskeepers that have passed. They were lovers. And
her name is Jessel.
Yeah.
Miss Jessel.
Miss Jessel, thank you. They were lovers on the grounds. They died. Miss Gideons, who's the governess, believes that their ghosts are on the grounds and they're possibly possessing the children.
Yes.
And there are times where we see as the audience Quint, which is his name, and Miss Jessel's, we kind of see an image of a person. So we're believing that it might be a ghost, or is it just a projection of her paranoia?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the scenes, maybe jumping a little bit, but like they see like a woman in a field? Is that what you're referring to?
That's one of them, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That part scared the fucking shit out of me. And I don't know why. Like, it's like not like... It's not like a jump scare or anything like that.
It's just unnerving, I think.
Yeah.
There's no like sound. It's not a jump scare. There's no sound. It just kind of cuts to like a woman in black on the lake, like over in the field a bit. And she's like, "Don't you see her?" And she's like getting more panicked. So you like get panicked with her of this person just standing and staring at them. So it's just, yeah, it's unnerving.
It was very frightening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like, I mean, the kids like increasingly kind of like say and do weird things, or like, you know, kind of talk a little bit like adults would, like kind of inappropriately, especially the boy. Like, the boy is, like,
Yeah.
creepy beyond means, and, like, that becomes, like I said, that behavior increases as the film goes on, and I really think, I don't really know, I guess, what to think. Like, were they possessed, were they not? Like, I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think it was all in her head, or do you think there's some basis to that?
It's really hard to say because, like, his true purpose was to be ambiguous about it, but he kind of gives you, like, hints to both.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, like, it's just, like, frustrating because it's, like, really, like, up to the viewer. Like, in the end, like, huge spoiler, I guess, at that point, because, like, this movie doesn't give you, like, enough, like, clues one way or to the other. And, like, there's, like, facts for both. And I think, like, thinking about it now, that there is something up with the kids. Like, it's not just, like, he's just, like, you know, smart for his age or, like, advanced for his age or anything like that. There's, like, there's something else going on, like, and, like, just because something may be in her head, like, it could be just, like, it's like the fact that she's dealing with this is also causing her to act that way. So she just could just be, like, I don't know. That's, like, my take, is like, the fact that she is dealing with this is just, like, adding to her own mental illness or whatever she has.
Yeah.
And that's a credit to Clayton and the cinematographer for, like, wanting to be ambiguous and, like, leading you both ways, that you're not really for certain which actually happened. I tend to lean towards it was in her head. There was some really weird behavior from Miles, especially. But like, with the ending, spoiler alerts, it's just Miles and Miss Gideon's at the house, and she's basically saying, say his name, meaning Quint, because he's, like, on the verge almost of telling her that that's who he is. He's Quint. But he doesn't, and the kid dies. I don't know of what, but the kid passes away.
Yeah.
And she's kind of left. And then doesn't she kiss him and say, it's all okay? You're free now, or whatever.
That happens twice in this movie, and I'm just, like, a bit uncomfortable, but, yeah, that was, I think, the times where it went too far. The only times, I guess.
It was given an X rating initially from the movie censors of Britain when the film came out, for that reason. Just for the kiss scene between Miss Gideon's and Miles. Just so you're clear, Miles is a child, Miss Gideon's is a woman, and they kiss on the mouth. And so it is twice in this movie, yeah. And not like a peck, like, it's meant to be kind of a romantic kiss, I think, to make you believe it's Quint, right? That he's possessed by this older man.
But it's like, it's not like a steamy kiss. Like, think, like,
it goes on a little too long.
Yeah. It's not like, you know, there's no Frenching in this movie. You know, it's not.
Yeah. It's just not a peck.
It's not the swinging 70s here. It's
the psychedelic 60s.
Pre-Beatles in America.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, I think it could have, like, probably been fine without it, but whatever.
Yeah, well, I think that was more of a, I guess, more blatant version of the Freudianism in horror that happened a lot in the 50s and the 60s with, like, cat people we talked about. That was a big thing that they wrote into scripts, and Capote is quoted as saying that's what he tried to do with this film, mainly with showcasing Miss Gideon's sexual repression during the time, which is a huge Freudian thing. It's like your sexual repressed urges and her paranoia that's kind of being projected as ghosts. And so that's what he was trying to do. So that's a more blatant version of it, but that's what he was attempting to do the whole time.
Well, I guess he succeeded in that.
Yeah, if you didn't get his subtext, he had her kiss a child, just to really bring it home. Mm-hmm. Which, talking about, you know, Freudianism in, like, horror in the 50s and 60s, I kind of wanted to talk just about the horror significance at large of this film. It falls into that psychological horror ghost stories, technically. Not the haunted house. Those Freudian undertones in the subtext. But to give context to people maybe who aren't familiar with that time period, I got a vibe that it was similar to kind of Women in Black or The Orphanage. Do you guys kind of get that similar modern movie vibe? That makes sense?
Yeah, I never finished the Woman in Black because I honestly was really bored by the beginning. But wasn't that like kind of a similar setting? Kind of like an old like house in the countryside of Britain or something like that, and things were I'm gonna stop there because that's all I really know about that movie. But yeah, from what I know, I would agree.
Yeah, you've nailed the setting. Like, it's in a Victorian home in Britain. The guy goes to this house because someone's said to have passed, and he's like he deals with wills, so he's just trying to make sure he has everything in order. And there's a woman in black there who kind of preys on children.
Okay, right.
And he doesn't know if he's seen a ghost or not.
Okay. Peter, what do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah, what the heck? I don't know. Well, in other than kind of horror significance, I said it was in the Criterion Collection. And there are several horror films in the Criterion Collection. I was going to pose to you guys, we have done a few films, either full-length episodes or mentioned them as like a blog post of the some other Criterion horror films. Can you guess any of them that we've done that are in the...
That we've talked
We've either
about?
done a full-length episode on it or we've done like a blog on it. So we've talked in detail. Yeah.
Let me Google
I'll
it.
give you the number, actually, that I found. I made a list. 1, 2, 3. So there's 5 that we've... So, 1, 2... We've done full-length episodes of 4 other Criterion horror films. And there's been 1 blog about a Criterion horror film.
Am I allowed to look at the episodes, or do I have to do it by...
You can look at the episodes if you'd like.
I don't know what the restraints were.
I'll get...
I'm sure I mentioned Godzilla at some point, and I know the original Godzilla has a Criterion release, and that's probably just mentioned alone in an episode. Is that one of them?
It is not one that I have selected or picked out. I have 4 here that we've done full-length episodes on, and then 1 that was a blog.
Blog post.
Yeah.
But I am right, though, that Godzilla is one of them that is released.
Sure.
And I have at least mentioned Godzilla.
At least 3 or
I
4
would say-
times.
Yeah, at least 3 or 4 times.
Fair. I will say, as a hint, the 4 ones we've done as full-length episodes, all predate the 70s. None of them leave the 60s.
I thought they would. Rosemary's Baby is
Yes.
one.
Correct.
Now you made it too easy for me now. Now I just gotta look at the episodes. Oh man.
I will say the blog post was yours, and I don't think it was specifically to this movie, but you used references like primarily to this movie only. And it's one of your first blog posts.
Was it my only blog post? Because I feel like I haven't written more than one.
It might have been that only one. David Cronenberg.
Oh man. Oh. Did he? Oh. Which one is? Is it? Oh, is it Scanners?
No. I think you talked up.
That's Criterion though.
I think you discussed. Yeah, it is. That's one of Cronenberg's that is in the Criterion, but this one is. I think you talked about it because of the special practical effects. It's practical effects, and it was at a time.
Oh god, what's his other one?
That one is Videodrome.
Oh, that's not the one I was thinking of. I was thinking of his other one. He has a lot on Criterion Collection.
Yeah, he does. The others, are you still guessing, or do you want these?
It's the French one that I can't remember the name of.
Eyes Without a Face.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the one. Yep.
I'm actually not doing. I'm not doing as well as I thought. I thought I knew Criterion Collection better than I actually did.
The last two they were only Pete and Matt episodes, so they're pretty early. One was never released over the airwaves. It is still in the vault, and we've mentioned it.
Oh, Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead is still in the vault somewhere, waiting to be released.
And that's a recent release of Criterion Collection too. What's the other one? Because I actually not doing so well.
I think it was the first movie you destroyed, but it's I think it's Cat People.
That's Criterion Collection?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I destroyed that movie?
I think it was your first one. I thought so.
That's not... No... I gotta go back to the books now.
Consult the record.
Okay, you might be right. I don't remember destroying... I thought the first one I destroyed was The Killer Reunion.
No, I think that was after Cat People. Well, it could have still been your first one.
It was...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was my first one I destroyed.
It could have been.
Because I'm usually pretty easy on movies.
Yeah. You give them the benefit of the doubt. Alright. Well, there's your Criterion Collection movies we've done, in case you were all wanting to know. Let's see. But I think before we kind of wrap up to Defend or Destroy, looking at box office, do you guys have any guesses whether this was a success or a failure? Or how much it made?
This was an extreme success.
I'm going to say a failure.
It was a success.
Because it was, okay.
Mm-hmm. At the time. I have to convert...
Like how successful?
See, now you're testing me. I gotta do my conversion rates from pounds to dollars.
Hey man, you don't have to do it.
Oh, this is for the integrity of the podcast. Yeah. So.
Hey, the pound was probably weaker than a dollar back then.
So their budget, like today dollars, was like just over $550,000 was the budget for this film, and it made $1.2 million. So it doubled its budget.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. For the time being.
All right. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. And
was it a critical success too? I think it was, right?
Yeah, I think I also remember reading, though, it was a critical success, but some people were annoyed with the departure from the book. Because the book is a ghost story, like 100% legitimate ghost. It relies on supernatural elements, and this one's more ambiguous, and some of the critiques at the time were skeptical of that. But overall, they thought it was a great film.
People are always mad about that. Like, I just feel like if it's a good movie, then it's hard to translate book to movie every time, and it's never going to be the same. And then like another example I like to think of is like The Shining, like how Stephen King himself hated Stanley Kubrick's version because it's different from the book. But like, I feel like Stanley Kubrick is a very great director and did what he thought was needed to translate to film, because you can't do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's two different mediums.
You know, having some of your own ideas is a good way to keep it, like, so you're not just seeing the book on screen, verbatim.
Like, some conversations are just going to feel weird or awkward, like, or they're not going to be like, oh, that's not how I envision the character to look, like, whatever. Yeah. Like, people have,
Yeah, it's different for everybody.
These crazy mindsets over a book they love.
Yeah. And that's a good example of Stephen King hating The Shining. And have you guys ever read the book? The actual Shining book?
No, I really want to, though.
I went and read it, and it is different from the movie quite a bit, but... and I had seen the movie several times. The movie, I believe, is far superior to the source material of the book. Like, it blows it out. Just it does change a lot of the plot even. But I think it makes for a better horror film, the way what Stanley Kubrick did with it. Better horror story.
Doesn't it annoy you how he was just able to go to different genres so well?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
he did a war film, he did a fucking science fiction film, he did a horror movie, like, he just did historical drama. Like, he's just like, I'm just gonna do every fucking genre there is and be good at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes a good director to really like find that nuance in film. And I was reading recently about the movie Us, which came out, Jordan Peele. People not comparing him to Kubrick, but kind of doing something different with the horror genre than we've seen in a long time. And they said he did something with the horror genre, like in this generation, that it's a horror film, it's in that genre, but it doesn't feel like a horror film entirely. And in the same way that The Godfather is a mafia movie that Coppola made, or that 2001: A Space Odyssey is sci-fi. Like, that's the genre they fall in, but the movies transcend that genre. They're a piece of their own.
It's because they know they're taking influence from other things that they like and just kind of like merge it all together and kind of create something new. Because like science fiction was so different probably up until Kubrick. I think Kubrick made the current sci-fi what it is today is because of him, and then Star Wars like kind of like popularized it and then continued what like Kubrick kind of like started.
Yeah, and that's a good way of putting it. He kind of reshapes the genre or sees where else you can take it from taking elements from other places.
Because sci-fi before that, like
the day the Earth stood still.
Apologize for my like my quick tangent here, but like or like even though I haven't seen it, but like I know Forbidden Planet, like the guy from Naked Gun, isn't Leslie Nielsen? Isn't he in that movie?
I'm not sure actually.
I thought he was, and it's just like a robot, like your stereotypical like robot that tries to kill the people. Like that's your sci-fi movie right there. It's just like that kind of stuff.
It was very one-dimensional. Yeah.
Yes.
With that, do you guys have anything additional you thought about the film you'd like us to talk about before we defend or destroy The Innocents?
I don't think so.
Okay. By the way, The Innocents, if it's hard to hear me say that, is spelled INNOCENTS. Like people are innocent, not innocence. Like you have innocence. I know that I might be
good distinction.
So if you're Googling it, that's what it is. And it's 1961 because there's like so many different versions or so many different shows with this title called The Innocents. 1961. But does anybody volunteer to go first?
I volunteer Lindsay to go first.
All right.
All right. Say no more. I really like this movie. I think it did a really good job of building suspense. I think overall it established a good pace for the story. I think it had a lot of good elements of gothic horror, with the setting and then with the use of the shadow and the light. The kids are extremely creepy. I think that they did a really good job, being child actors especially, acting, possessed by dead people. I think this film, with its ambiguity, makes it very psychological, as we kind of touched on before. I think it has aged well. Which is a big feat with it being made in the early 60s. And I think people today would still find it terrifying, even, without it relying on the CGI or the gore that we would normally see in that kind of film today. Overall, it's a defend. I really liked it.
Well put.
I mean, I'll echo that. I mean, I can be pretty short. I picked it. I've been wanting to see it. Heavily defend. It's a stylized type of movie that I like. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the same style of Eyes Without a Face that we did. as a French film, really on the same time period. Heavy use of shadows. It uses the camera really to tell the story and build that atmosphere instead of relying on gore, as Lindsay said. And Lindsay hit a lot of the points that I was going to mention, so I agree with most of them. And it ages well. I think people will still find terrifying moments in it. Just like we talked about the lady on the lake that we looked at, and that's all it was. So, and yeah, I heavily defend The Innocents. It was a movie for the first time in a while that's like not brand new, that I kind of just wanted to buy the Criterion Collection version of it. It made me kind of want to buy it, yeah.
Yeah, this is a movie that I obviously saw before, since I mentioned it earlier. I also defend it. I own a Criterion Collection, which is not cheap.
Yeah.
They're like $40, like normal price, but you gotta wait for those Barnes and Noble sale when they're 50% off, and then it's really worth it. I don't know what else I can say that hasn't been said, but it's a well structured movie. It's got it's ahead of its time. Like you said, the shadows make it cool, and it's like, and I feel like it's not overly stylistic, kind of like a recent movie from that time with another ghost movie. It was directed by Robert Wise, I think his name is. He did The Day the Earth Stood Still, and then he did, what the fuck is it called? It's another ghost movie, like literally it came out this time. You know what I'm talking about, Matt? And it's
early
like
60s.
Yeah. Oh, God, it's at the tip of my tongue too. And it's like, it's good. I like it, but I almost
The
feel
Haunting?
like the shots. Yes, that's exactly what it is. For me, that movie's like too stylistic with like the camera shots. Like it's like it almost it took me like out of the movie because there's like they're cool. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just like, okay, this is a movie. This is a movie right here with all the bells and whistles here.
Yeah.
Like a really well funded movie, but this like is a story, a ghost story, and then you don't know like what's completely going on. Like it's just like the focus is like the story, and then like you have great people working on just like the atmosphere.
Yeah, so we have a unanimous defend from everyone. So check it out. The Innocents comes highly recommended from us. If you want to watch it, you can. I watched it on YouTube. I believe it's still there. The full movie's free on YouTube. You don't have to rent it or anything, so you can check it out. I'm sure it's on Prime or iTunes to rent it, but definitely it's free on YouTube. So check it out while it's there. Or I'm gonna plug.
Sorry, I was going to say, if you want Spanish subtitles, I found a website that has those as well. So if you're, trying to learn another language, that might help.
Yeah.
Just saying. I don't know what the website was, and it's gone now, but it was in Spanish. You can cut that part out. It's not necessary. I just wanted everyone to know that my subtitles
no cuts.
Yeah. Everything is transparent.
Oh, yeah, we had this talk.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
I will plug also, I don't know the name of it, but there is a new streaming service for Criterion Collection films. So
that's right.
If you like Netflix or something, this is the same kind of streaming service, but for Criterion. So you could have an unlimited library of Criterion films, and you can definitely watch it there. So you can check that out. But until then, get at us on Twitter and Facebook or social media. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about on recent episodes, or check out our blogs and our website. We love hearing from you guys. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Leave us a review. That really helps people kind of get the word out about us. But until next time, I am Matt Johnson, and I will remain in those shadows, just like the ghost of the Innocents.
Whoa. The app you're thinking of is called the Criterion Channel, and I am being paid by them. Advertised. No, I'm kidding. But that's all.